What's going on, and welcome to the NBA DFS Q&A show. My name is Tom Vecchio. I'm here every Wednesday taking your questions about the night's NBA slate. You can find it on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook pages. You can follow me on Twitter at DFS_Tom. We have 11 games. There's a lot to get to. Let's hop right in. Starting off with some questions. Born to Laugh is asking any 3x2s I like. That is the 3x2 bet on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Will there be 2+3s in the first 3 minutes of the game? So there would be something like tonight. Obviously liking the Suns and the Warriors, where I would say have plenty of scoring upside there, of multiple players on the floor at any given time that can knock down some threes. So I like that one for a little bit of plus money. Certainly liking Grizz and the Spurs. This one also at plus money is looking good. Kings Rockets you could also go to. This has a lot of juice, so it's looking like it's likely to hit, but it's obviously not a spot that you want to be, laying that much juice at -142. And then I would probably come down to the Hornets and the Knicks. -124, a little bit of juice there if you're taking all these solo. The Hornets allowing the second most made three-pointers. So I would certainly look to the Grizz and the Spurs, the Suns and the Warriors, Kings Rockets, depending on how much juice you are willing to lay. Born to Laugh is also asking the sixth man question, which player is going to be coming off the bench for a team that probably shouldn't be too popular, but also has some good scoring upside. There's a lot of options tonight. One of them for me is going to consistently be Bogdan Bogdanovic for the Atlanta Hawks. Great three-point upside from him in a lot of these recent games. Obviously, a very, very favorable matchup going up against the OKC Thunder. It's a high over-under, also a huge spread in this game, but we should still see the Hawks players playing plenty of minutes because they are in a spot where they have added motivation. I don't want to say added motivation. They have just flat-out motivation because they need to secure their spot in the play-in, and that's one thing we need to account for some of these teams is, are they locked into a playoff spot? Are they completely out of the playoffs? Are they fighting for seeding, fighting for, the play-in spot where their starters could be seeing a few more minutes than usual, whatever it might be. So I would go to those two easily. Dante DiVincenzo, also a great option on tonight's slate. Lonnie Walker, always a solid option. And then potentially looking to, like an Otto Porter coming off the bench for the Warriors that can fill the stat sheet a little bit. Hopefully we see a little bit more scoring from him would be good. Maybe Jalen Noel for the Grizz. Grim on YouTube is asking Grant Williams or Justin Anderson, which forward is the better play to start? So, Grant Williams, not really a player I'm going to tonight. With Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum back in the lineup, and this game is a 213 over-under. Also going up against the Heat, one of the top 5 teams in defensive rating this year. Meanwhile, Justin Anderson, while he's not an amazing player in any capacity, this game is a 235 over-under. We're talking about 20 points higher. So I'm certainly looking to Anderson at a similar salary, just taking the better game environment overall for the Pacers and the Nuggets. This game is going to be one we want to be targeting. We know Jokic should be pretty popular on tonight's slate. Going up against the Pacers, it's going to be just a dominant performance from him. Grim is also asking Bruno Ferdinando, Greg Brown, or Timothy Lulo-Cabarrot for the Atlanta Hawks, one of those sets of players. So we're dealing with Houston. Obviously, they are very, very shorthanded. And let's switch to the Rockets real quick. He should be getting the start at center because both Christian Wood and Alperen Sengun are out tonight. So at $3,500 going up against Sacramento, who are the second worst team in the league against centers. This is a great matchup, and he's minimum salary. So I want to be attacking this game, not just via the center position, but really all options on both sides. So I would be siding with him, number one. Greg Brown, I think, is also solid. I wrote him up today in terms of the 3 value plays I like. TLC for the Hawks is also good if Hunter doesn't start. He's one of the players we're kind of keeping an eye on. So I would also go to him, but I would probably go to them in that order for the players for them. DJ on Facebook was asking, do you like today's boost? Let's see today's boost. It's a 3.1, right? Yeah, Booker, Thompson, Jordan Poole to make 10 plus threes combined. It's only plus 110. It seems like a pretty straightforward bet. We're seeing a lot of these players, take 7, 8, 9 attempts per game, and they're knocking down 4, 5, 6 per game. So, Jordan Poole, he's going to hit 5, 6 on his own. Klay Thompson, of course, can always hit 5 or 6. It feels like 2 of these players can get it done just by themselves. So, yeah, I like today's boost. It's obviously not amazing odds, but it's plus money on something that is looking pretty solid especially for a game that has a high over-under. Was it 220? Where am I looking? NBA here. 221 for this game. Saban is asking favorite bets for tonight and then favorite value options. We'll get there. So the bets that I've made so far tonight would be Davion Mitchell for the Sacramento Kings, the over on his PRA. I got it at 32.5. It had a little bit more juice. I think it was minus 118 for Davion Mitchell, 32.5. It's now up to 33. Great usage for him. Amazingly easy matchup, right? Going up against the Houston Rockets. He's putting up basically over 30 plus combined just for points and assists. Now, he's obviously not adding a massive amount of rebounds on a nightly basis, but this game with a super high over-under things at 235 or 229, it opened up a little bit higher, is a spot that we want to be looking. So I took Davion Mitchell, the over on his PRA. I took the over on 3.5 made threes by Desmond Bane for the Memphis Grizzlies. This game is also looking very solid, shooting for some plus money there. And then RJ Barrett, the over on his PRA for the Knicks, which is at 34.5. Let's double check this for RJ Barrett. I got it at 34.5. It's 35.5 now. The Knicks also are technically not out of the playoffs. This is a winnable matchup for them going up against the Hornets. Also a big pace-up spot for them. The Knicks are super slow in pace, and the Hornets are super fast. They also don't play a whole ton of defense. So I like the spot for RJ Barrett, a player that can realistically put up 35 real points. Like that's something he has, kind of in his bag, that the ability to do, and his PRA is only sitting at 35. So RJ Barrett going for 28 or 30 plus real points and then adding in a few assists or rebounds is not going to be a shock. So those are the three bets that I made for tonight. The value options that I'll be looking to, again, Greg Brown, you always can be going there. Satoransky for Washington should also be pretty solid. We could be seeing Kevin Love. He's not in the best game environment overall, but I certainly do love his production. He's producing, I think it's 1.18 FanDuel points per minute when both Evan Mobley and Jared Allen are off the court for Cleveland. Game environment versus Dallas isn't amazing, but just the production per minute and the minutes overall should be locked in for Kevin Love. So Greg Brown, Kevin Love, Dante DiVincenzo, these are all players. And then Fernando for Houston now that he should be in the starting lineup. How would you stack the Houston game? Getting extra exposure to this matchup is always a good idea to teams that don't play defense. I would say that Davion Mitchell is probably first and foremost for me, getting some exposure there, along with Dante DiVincenzo. I'm big on Jayshawn Tate tonight as well, $4,100. He's another value I'd be looking to. And at that point, you can kind of pay up for Kevin Porter if you're looking to jam multiple players from this game into one lineup. We're talking about 3-point upside, two teams that are in the top 7 of the league when it comes to offensive pace, two teams that simply do not play defense. They are both in the bottom 4 of the league for the most FanDuel points allowed per game to all positions combined. So just plenty of production back and forth from these two teams. There's value here. We have some upside for some players. All good. DJ on Facebook is asking, any upside to starting Kevin Huerter over Dillon Brooks? So Kevin Huerter over Dillon Brooks for Memphis. I kind of like Dillon Brooks just in terms of just well-rounded production. That's generally what we get from him. Kevin Huerter, we're honestly hoping for him to knock down some threes. Like that's probably where he's going to be getting his most value. I would probably lean towards Brooks just because this game has a little bit of a closer spread. The over-unders are obviously somewhat comparable, but if we don't see a whole lot of production from Kevin Huerter, but the Hawks still blow out the Thunder, I wouldn't be surprised. So I would lean towards Brooks in that matchup. Are there any must-play options for cash games? Savan on YouTube is asking. I would say borderline that Jokic is a must-play. The Pacers are simply not playing defense right now, combined with the fact that the Nuggets are, again, still in a spot. They're one of the teams that are still in a spot where they need to be winning games. We got like 10, 11, 12 days left in the regular season. Like they need to be winning games and securing their spot in the playoffs. So Jokic going for, I don't want to just say 50 or 60 plus points. Like he could have a massive game tonight. So I would say Jokic and Davion Mitchell are basically two of my, borderline must plays. It's possible to get to Murray. If you roster Murray at shooting guard and you look to Mitchell at point guard, you also want to, give yourself as much flexibility as possible. I think going to Satoransky is fine. Like I said, I'm big on Jayshawn Tate tonight as well. There's some roster flexibility, and you have two players over 10,000. Mitchell's been playing phenomenally as of late. I'll certainly be looking to Kevin Love also at the power forward position just to increase the roster flexibility. So I would say Mitchell and Jokic are like my two borderline must plays. Bethany's just coming here to say hi. How's it going? Always good to hear from you. Yeah, RJ did go to Duke. I'm hoping a big game from him tonight. Like I said, I took the over on his PRA. I think that the injury situation for tonight is okay. It's certainly not terrible. Tatum and Brown, they're not in the best game environment. Valanciunas and Jaren Jackson are, I would say, a little bit more important. We obviously know that Valanciunas for the New Orleans Pelicans has a very, very easy matchup against the Trailblazers. Every team facing the Trailblazers right now has an easy matchup. This is a spot where we should see New Orleans kind of just roll over the Trailblazers just because they have no one out there. So if he's not in there, there's a chance that we could be seeing Jackson Hayes start at center, which we have seen before. Earlier this season, last year, we have seen Jackson Hayes get the start at center. That means, someone from the bench could be jumping in. It could be Larry Nance. Maybe Willie Hernangomez gets the start at center. In that circumstance, he's $3,700. That obviously offers plenty of salary relief. Ultimately, I would look towards Hernangomez again as a power forward. I want to be prioritizing getting up to Jokic or even Karl-Anthony Towns, who's $8,900, who's honestly somewhat affordable tonight going up against the Toronto Raptors. This is also another game environment that I absolutely love. 229, close spread. So this is one of the games that I'm targeting heavily. I would say Minnesota, Toronto, Sacramento, Houston, Memphis, San Antonio, Phoenix, Golden State, Denver, Indiana are, you could choose like just players from these games and you are going to be in a phenomenal spot. Dallas and Cleveland obviously isn't amazing with the 214 over under. The 2-point spread is fine. Both teams are, second to last and dead last in the league when it comes to offensive pace. So I don't love it. We still should see Luka, Kevin Love, maybe Karis LeVert as some popular options. Darius Garland's just playing an insane amount of minutes right now. So we should see them as somewhat popular. But overall, this game environment has to be, like a half a step behind or a full step behind these games that have totals that are 20 points higher. So that's where I'm looking tonight, where I want exposure to these high over-under games, teams that don't play defense, also looking to some players and some teams that are, still have this motivation factor where they have to win for the playoffs, they have to secure their seed, et cetera, et cetera. DJ saying, I'm thinking of taking Portland on the spread tonight. Should I bet low if I take it, or do you think it will hit tonight? I have no confidence in the Trailblazers in any capacity outside of a fantasy perspective. Like, no betting angles for me when it comes to the Trailblazers. Like, it's realistic that they lose this game by 25 points tonight. I like Greg Brown tonight. I think you continue to go to Brandon Williams, Keon Johnson. They're players from a fantasy perspective, and Drew Eubanks. Like, I think they have much more fantasy viability. But if I woke up tomorrow and I saw that Portland lost by 25 points, I would not be shocked in any capacity. I don't think, you really should be either, just given the let's just call it what it is, like the lack of talent that they have out on that lineup compared to the Pelicans with, especially Valanciunas plays. McCollum, Ingram, Valanciunas. I want to say like those three could kind of just beat that team by themselves. So I have no interest in Portland with the roster that they have out there right now. The only team, the underdog team on the spread that I would have interest in covering would probably be the Knicks at +3 at home. Like, they still have plenty of motivation. It would be them, maybe the Cavaliers at +2. We obviously know the Cavs are a good team. They're fighting for their spot. The Mavs are coming off a huge win last night. Maybe the Mavs have tired legs. Like, that's what you'd be hoping for. The Cavs have been a pretty solid cover team this year. They are 39-33-3 against the spread this year. So I would go to the Cavs, maybe the Knicks at home against the Hornets. So there's certainly a lot going on when it comes to tonight's slate. I think that the players, in terms of player props, the lines are very, very tight right now. We want to be targeting the players that are seeing an increase in usage, seeing an increase in minutes. Garland would be another player I'm kind of lukewarm on tonight when it comes to the slate overall. These minutes are crazy. We're talking not just a floor of like 35. We look at a starter like, okay, he's going to play 33, 35 minutes most nights. I mean, he's up at 40. He has a floor of 38 minutes in a lot of these recent games, just because the Cavaliers are fighting to get out of the play-in and kind of secure their spot in the playoffs. So Garland props are super solid. Double props for him are also super solid if you're looking to go to that. Let's see what his lines are at, because Garland's a player I've been going to pretty recently. Garland's plus 105 for a double-double. That's not too bad. Player performance double. Let's see. Garland is there. Garland win plus Garland double-double plus win. Garland 10 plus assist and a win is plus 320. That's not too bad. Garland I don't like the threes, 5 plus rebounds. The 320 on 10 plus assist plus Cleveland to win. That's not so bad for Garland, where he's out there putting up 10 plus assists in a lot of these recent games. You figure if he can get to 10 plus assists, they would also be winning that game. Okay, so 320 is something that I have a little bit of interest in. Again, this game overall is okay when it comes to a fantasy perspective. I have interest in Kevin Love. I have interest in Luka, a little bit of Karis LeVert, but a 214 over-under is, the same thing we said about Miami and Boston, where from a fantasy perspective, this game's okay. I'm not sure I want to be going to a game that features two good defensive teams and what realistically could be a playoff type atmosphere with the lowest over-under on the slate for Boston and Miami, when there are games that have over-unders that are 20 points higher. So that's really where I'm looking when it comes to a lot of tonight's games, which the games that I'm targeting, I want to be focusing in on those. I'm not afraid to simply remove entire teams or players from my player pool. There's an argument to be made about simply removing Tatum and Jaylen Brown from the player pool, just because I think that there are players around their salaries that are in better spots. I'd rather be spending the salary. I'd rather be going to RJ Barrett. I'd rather be going to Desmond Bane. I'd rather be going to Jordan Poole over Jaylen Brown, who are all at the same salary. Klay Thompson, Tyrese Halliburton, all these players I would say are significantly better than Jaylen Brown tonight, who is listed as probable. He's expected to play. So I'm not worried about his, injury status. The same thing with Tatum. He's listed as probable, expected to play, but I would much rather be going to Siakam in a game that has a higher over-under, a closer spread, not by much, but a much higher over-under at the similar salary for Tatum. What FD score? Yeah, you want to be shooting for, 5X. You want to be getting into the 300s. You got to be getting up to the 300s, especially moving up towards the top of trying to boost your score. So you want to be ultimately, just from like a base standpoint, you want to be locking in players that have a high minutes projection, players that are going to be seeing high usage or an increased amount of usage for whatever reason could be an injury situation. They'll see extra usage when X players off the court. So you want to be locking in high minutes. You want to be targeting good game environments that have high over-unders that present plenty of back and forth action, because the more possessions there are in a game, that obviously gives the player more chances just to pick up stats, which is why the old, NBA DFS saying of minutes equal money is like players who are just playing minutes out there just for a ton of minutes will lead you towards making money in NBA DFS, because there's a variety of ways the player can rack up fantasy points, right? In NFL, like the player has to have the ball in his hands if he's a receiver or a running back in order to get points. For a basketball player, him grabbing rebounds and assists just because the game ends 220 to 225 is very, very likely. So a player that fills the stat sheet, kind of like Keldon Johnson or Scotty Barnes, two players I would say I pretty consistently have a good amount of interest in. They fill up the stat sheet. Yes, the scoring is going to be inconsistent just because he has off nights, but the minutes are solid, the peripheral stats are solid, and the game environment, hopefully, is going to enable him to rack up extra points, extra assists, et cetera, et cetera. Grim is asking, under more wagers on the Sacramento Houston game, what would you take your the yes bets for the 2+ field goals in the first 3 minutes? Yeah, I like the 2x3 for this matchup as well. That's always a good one. The more wagers for in the Sacramento, would you take the bet for the two? Yeah, that's under the 3x2 for NBA overall. That's sitting at plus money, right? Kings Rockets, or is that minus 142? I mean, this is the game that I like just because there's no defense being played, and we could certainly see plenty of 3-pointers from both teams. But the juice is not something I would go to solo. Like 142, I'd probably try and put this with another Spurs. Like I would try and get this minus 142 just for a solo bet is a little bit too much juice to be laying. That's just my personal take on things. So like a little 2 parlay at plus 268 is pretty solid. Minus 142 is not a spot that I traditionally look for most bets especially like something like that. Do I have any Final Four predictions? Bethany is asking. I would say that this is probably the most boring Final Four I could possibly remember, with all of these just traditional blue blood teams, all these like traditional powerhouses that like I don't follow college basketball a lot, so I just generally root for upset. So I was like looking for like Houston or Texas Tech, one of these sorts of teams to be in it, just to have some differentiation outside of all these blue blood teams. So my Final Four, I haven't made any Final Four bets. I guess I would take Villanova. They're, what are they, +4, +4.5, something like that. I would take Villanova at 4.5, and I don't know. I would like the interest in Duke on the money line. It's obviously way too much, so I would maybe just wait until Duke falls behind if they do, and then live bet them, hopefully at even money or close to it. Hopefully they ride the narrative, and I don't know, they get Coach K to win, like, I don't know, something like that. But I'm not big on the Final Four or college basketball overall. And DJ saying take UConn for the women's tournament, of course. So that's what you could be doing for that. College basketball is certainly not my thing. So if you want to go into the 2x3 back to the NBA for the Houston and the Sacramento game, this is a spot that I wouldn't go to solo at -142. I'm not a fan of laying that much juice on a solo bet. Overall, tonight's slate, injuries are good. I think we're in a good spot. Recap on the bets that I made. I took the over on RJ Barrett, points, rebounds, assist. It's sitting at 33. I'm pretty sure I got it at 32 and a half. I'd have to double check that. The over on, no, I got it at 34. It's 35 and a half. Davion Mitchell, I got at 32. It's at 33. And then Desmond Bane over 3.5 made threes going up against San Antonio. Love the volume of shots from Desmond Bane, especially with Ja Morant out of the lineup. High volume shots, good amount of them coming from downtown, which we always like to see. I don't need 5 or 6 from him. We just need, 4, and he'll get to that plus money bet. So I am on board with Desmond Bane tonight, not only from a betting perspective, but also from a fantasy perspective. I will say I have a ton of interest in DeJounte Murray for the Spurs as well. They are another team that has a ton of motivation factor. They need to secure their spot in the play-in. They jumped ahead of the Lakers with the Lakers' loss last night against the Mavericks. So they're holding down the 10th seed right now. The Spurs are. So, getting them in a spot where they're going to be scoring plenty of points and they have extra motivation should lead to plenty of minutes and usage for Murray, a player that we know can already put up a double-double, triple-double almost by halftime in a lot of these matchups. So I'm looking to Murray. I'm looking to Trae Young. I'm looking at Davion Mitchell as some of my top guard options on tonight's slate. Looking to Jokic very, very heavily tonight. He is a player I absolutely want to be going to. And I want to say it's realistic to get Young, Murray. Can you get 3 players over 10K at 4,600? I think that's possible. I think that's viable to do. I'm also a fan of Jayshawn Tate in this game. I like the value with Satoransky because he's been in the starting lineup as of late. 3 players in your lineup that are over 10K, get some deep value in there. Players are going to be seeing a lot of minutes in great game environments. You still have 5,400 to work with for 3 players remaining. This is where I'm going with a lot of builds. And it's not going to be Trae Young. It's going to be potentially getting to Darius Garland. If it's not going to be them, it's going to be going to maybe Booker. If it's not going to be that, it's going to be going to Poole. Obviously, mixing up the player pool a little bit. I want to keep the group of values that I'm targeting pretty solid and pretty, a tight group of players. And the same thing with the studs. Pay up for the studs that I have a ton of interest in. Murray, PRA over 42.5. Let's see what the juice is on that. It probably should be pretty even, but this is a player that we know can go for a triple-double. -122, it's at 40.5 here. So wherever you're seeing at 42.5, it's a little bit lower here. So there's a little bit of value potential there for Murray. He's obviously scored a good amount in the most recent game, but it's more about the assists and the rebounds. The fact that he put up 20-plus assists and rebounds combined, getting to his normal 20-ish real points. So I like the over on 40.5 for Murray, if you can find that, not 42.5. I like to combine PRA combos with player performance doubles. Savan is saying on YouTube. Not first basket, player performance. Yeah, and that's a good like correlation thought. It's like, okay, a player is going to be doing X, Y, and Z. What is that going to lead to? Like if Murray has hits the over on the PRA, he's probably having a double-double, and it puts San Antonio in a spot to win. So that's a good line of thinking right there. DJ saying, do you like Capela to score 15-plus points tonight at plus 146? Let's see, Capela. Obviously, this is a very, very easy matchup for him. I think Capela is one of the centers that I think could have a huge game. And if you're not spending up for Jokic, it's the player that I would probably be going to. OKC, the third most FanDuel points allowed. They're giving up 22 points per game to opposing centers. Who on this OKC lineup, which is right here, like, who's going to stop him? Like Trae Young dishing out 10, 12 assists to Kevin Huerter or Bogdanovich coming off the bench, knocking down threes, or down low to Clint Capela, just racking up the points, is something I absolutely love. So I think Capela at 15-plus points is something he could absolutely go to. He's been there in back-to-back games. He was a little bit inconsistent prior to that, but we do know that their lineup's been changing a little bit. So Capela for that nice plus money at 15-plus points. Again, Hawks, a team with motivation. They need to be winning games. They need to be securing their spot in the play-in. They cannot be, even if they're up by 10 or 12 in the fourth quarter, it's not like they're going to be pulling their starters. They would have to be up by 25 in order for them to pull their starters. Every game's a must-win game for them and a lot of these teams. So if they're up by 25, how are they getting there? It's probably Clint Capela and Trae Young having big games. So I absolutely love the plus money on Clint Capela, 15-plus points against a very, very weak OKC defense. 560 is a lot for Capela, plus 560 for 20-plus points. He was 19 and 22 in the last few games, 17 and 11 field goal attempts. That's what we like to see, right? This is what it's more about, the field goal attempts being up there rather than this. So 19 and 22. That's a big number for Trae Young sitting at plus 25. So Clint Capela might be a player that I'm adding to my betting card for tonight just because the matchup is so easy. And again, they have motivation in order to keep winning. Again, the bets that I made, Desmond Bane over 3.5 made threes, RJ Barrett over 34.5 PRA, Davion Mitchell over 32.5 PRA. Players that see good usage, taking plenty of shots, great game environments, good matchups. RJ Barrett's playing massively up in pace against the Hornets. Again, the Knicks are 28th. The Hornets are sitting up at 4th. Massive pace up spot there. Super high over-under for Mitchell going up against the Rockets. Mitchell's been posting almost a double-double on a nightly basis. And, of course, Desmond Bane taking plenty of three-pointers with Ja Morant out of the lineup. This is looking to be a great slate. I think we're in for a very, very high-scoring slate, just given some of the over-unders that we have. Next week is the final week of the NBA season. We will be back on Wednesday at 4 p.m. to wrap things up. As always, this can be found on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook pages. You can follow me on Twitter at DFS_Tom. And until next time, good luck in your contests.